og velkommen til Ægteskab Uden Grænser, hvor vi skal have en times rådgivning. Vi starter her kl. 15. Jeg giver lige god tid til at komme ind, sådan at der er så mange med som muligt fra start af. Og det hele i dag vil blive på engelsk. Sådan at både danskeren og ægtefællen kan følge med i, hvad reglerne er. Bare så I er orienteret. Så det prøver vi lige en hel time på engelsk i dag. Så nu venter vi bare lige på, at klokken bliver 15. På min skærm her er der 7 minutter til, så der er ingen hastværk med at komme ind. Så efterhånden som folk de kommer ind, så byder jeg dem lige velkommen. Lige nu kan jeg se, at der står 0 seere, men det er i hvert fald her, mens vi sender live. Der kan jo så være nogen, der ser det efterfølgende. Men ellers så vil jeg bare være stille, indtil klokken den er omkring 15. Så kom der nogle seere med. Lige nu der står der, at der er 1 seer her. Velkommen til dig. For god ordens skyld skal jeg lige sige, at hele timen i dag er på engelsk. Bare for at prøve noget andet. Nu er vi på 3 seere. Velkommen til jer også. Vi starter her klokken 15. Hele timen bliver på engelsk. Jeg tror ikke på, at der bliver ret meget spørgsmål, eller ret meget tid til spørgsmål og svar. Så jeg vil prøve at holde en ene tale i dag, fordi vi har faktisk rimelig meget, vi skal igennem med det her emne, som vi skal tale om i dag. Så fra klokken 15, så taler jeg engelsk i en hel time. Værsgo. Det kan man så tage, som man vil. Men det er simpelthen af hensyn til, at både en selv og ens ægtefælle kan følge med i, hvad reglerne er. Der bliver begrænset mulighed for spørgsmål og svar i dag, fordi der er rigtig meget, jeg skal nå at tale om, inden timen er slut. bliver der tid til det, så tager vi det i slutningen af timen. Og jeg har stadigvæk lige lidt hoste, som jeg også havde sidste gang. Så det skal jeg stærkt beklage, men det har jeg. William, ja, det kan man godt. Nej, det er nok fordi de fleste de vælger at flytte til et andet EU-land. Men det er faktisk muligt, og der ligger en EU-dom på det. Ja, time is up. Now it's 3 o'clock p.m. here in Denmark. And it's time for Facebook Live counseling here from Ægteskab Uden Grænser. All this hour will be in English only, so both the Danish part and the foreign part can follow and learn about the rules on relocating to Denmark after settling in another EU or EEA country. To begin with, there has been a court case that I will refer to here in the beginning. It's a court case from what is called the EFTA court. EFTA court is a court, a kind of EU justice court for Norway, Iceland and Liechtenstein, and they interpret the EEA rules for those three countries. They're basically the same as for EU countries. What the EFTA court has ruled is the actual rules, except if the European Union Court of Justice make a comment on it in a later case in their part. But in the EFTA court case, named E28/15 Jabi, there was a couple from Norway, and the guy was from an African country. They choose to settle in Spain for 9 months. However, the Norwegian woman decided to travel back and forth between Norway and Spain. So she was in Spain for 2 months and in Norway for 1 month, and that repeated over those 9 months. And when they tried to apply for going back to Norway, they got refusal because they believe that the Norwegian woman has not been there in Spain, factual and real. So the Norwegian Tingsret, as it's called, it's a local court, said that you do not fulfill these requirements. And that ended up in the EFTA court, and the EFTA court said the same. You have to be there in the host member state for at least 3 months non-stop. You are allowed to go back and forth in order to work, but you have to commute daily back and forth. If you cannot do that, you cannot claim EU law. I will give you the link to this court case. I put it up now, so you can read it on your own. It's in English, this one. You can also find it in Norwegian on the eftacourt.int if you want it to read it in Norwegian. So that is what you have to be aware of to begin with. So travel back to for instance Denmark for 1 or 2 weeks as a kind of permanent pattern that will make the authorities turn your application down when you return. So be aware of that to begin with. Do you then need a visa or a residence permit in that host member state before you can move back to Denmark? Actually not. There is a guideline from the EU Commission telling about this, and it basically say that if the union citizen and the third country national member, family member, travel together, for instance in the same car or the same airplane or whatever it could be, from one EU country to another, then the third national country family member do not need to have a visa or a residence card from the host member state in order to go back to Denmark, even if you go through other EU countries. But I have to underscore that this is only a guideline, so it is not anything that the European Union Court of Justice can enforce. And I'll also give you the link to that one. That is what I just put up here, starting with no visa but still want to travel. So I know that we have guided people before that you have to have a valid visa or a valid residence card or permit in order to do this travel, but actually you do not need it if you go together. And the intent is to relocate. So be very much aware of that also. Then the good question is, how can we move back when it is time to move back to Denmark after you have exercised EU law in another EU country or EEA member state? That can actually be a good question. The earliest time you can lodge an application for a Danish residence card is when you have been living in the other EU or EEA member state for at least a month, not 3 months. And you don't have to live together for 3 months. You can do it earliest after being there for 1 month. And then you can send your document as you go. Of course, you have to remain in that other EU country for at least 3 months as a European citizen. And for your spouse, there's no lower limit, you can say. However, you have to consolidate your relationship in that other EU country. So that basically say that you have to be there for 2 or 3 weeks at least as the third country national. So that is how that goes. And then you keep sending documents. I recommend that you collect for 1 month at a time and then send it all together every month. And when Siri in Denmark says that now they have enough document to process your case, then fine, you don't need to send any more. And it can actually shorten your period of time where you have to wait for the Danish residence card, because you can start applying when you have been in the host member state for just 1 month as the European citizen. And then you can also ask, how do we go about to go back to Denmark? I usually say that there are 3 options that you can use. And it's up to you which one you choose, depending on how safeguard you want to make yourself. The first one is that you apply in Denmark at Siri while you still live in the host member state, and then you stay there until you have the final answer from Siri on your application. And when you have the application, you can move back to Denmark. You have a time frame of 6 months to do that from their decision. The other one is that you lodge the application while you still live in the host member state, and while they are processing your your case, you move back to Denmark. Then you just have to notify Siri about your new address in Denmark. And the third point is that you move first and ask afterwards. Which means that you move back to Denmark, and from the time you have arrived in Denmark, you have 3 months to apply for a Danish EU residence card. Be aware here that when you do the actual move from the other EU country to Denmark, you are no longer, as a third country national part, allowed to work in that host country. But from the very second you cross the Danish border and relocate to Denmark, you are allowed to work in Denmark, even you don't have a permit yet, and you are allowed to go to language school if you want that. Both those two things are optional, so you are not obligated to do those two things, work and language school. So it's optional if you want it or not. If you want it, there is a deposit on 2,000 kroner per module you have to go through. There are 6 modules in all, so that will be 12,000 all. And for every module that you pass, you'll get 2,000 kroner back. So if you pass all 6 modules, the time in language school has been for completely free, because you get all your money back. I'm quite sure that you have heard about the EU directive on free movement. It has a number, 2004/38. However, this directive only talking about moving to another EU country, and not moving back to the European citizens' own country. But the European Union Court of Justice has made some case laws telling that it has similar how can you say it? That it also works when you move back to the Danish parts, when you move back to Denmark. So so basically, what is written in the directive also goes when you go back to Denmark after have been exercising EU law in another country. But it's not everything in that directive that counts when you go back to Denmark. For instance, Article 7 and 8 only partial, or actually do not, are not enforceable when you go back. just to ensure you about that one also, and so you can read it on your own if you don't have read it yet, I also have the link to that one, and I will put it up in a second here. Like that. And this is the English version of the directive. You can also find it in all the other languages that is spoken within the EU countries officially. But this one is the English one. And because the reason why Article 7 and 8 does not apply here when you move back to Denmark is that, first of all, you need to prove to the Danish authorities that you actually have lived in that other EU country, or as host country, as I will refer to here, and that is more. You need much more document to do that. When you move to another EU country, you don't have to put very much documents up for the authorities in the host country, but you do when you come back to Denmark, because you need to prove that you actually have lived in that other EU country. And also, if you go to Article 8.4, where it's telling about how much money you need, there is a case law from the European Union Court of Justice telling that when you move back to your own country, EU country, that move is actually unconditional. So the authorities cannot put up any demand on how much money you have to have successfully for the coming time after you move back to Denmark. So actually, you yourself or your partner can be on social welfare. Just a second. So that is also a point you have to be keen on. So there is a lot of misunderstanding about all these things here, but that is actually how it works. So the next question then is, which kind of documents do we need to provide to Siri when we want to go back to Denmark? That's an interesting question, actually, because there can be a lot of different ways to do it. And it does not depend on if you are a worker or self-sufficient or whatever it is. It is, do you actually have been living in that other EU country, or did you not? And again, I refer to that Ægteskab case law that I mentioned earlier. And you can go in and read it yourself on the link that I put up. But the basic documents you need to provide is your tenancy contract, your bills on your house rent, your bills on electricity, heat, lighting, water supply, internet connection, except if that is included in your house rent, TV license if you need that, and then the most important of that is your bank statements, what we in Danish call kontoudtog, from your bank, showing that you have actually spent money in the host country daily or almost daily for the period that you have actually been living there. You can add a lot of other things. And what you add is completely up to you. But I would recommend that, of course, you only add things that add up to what you already have known from now that you need as a basic. So it can be letters from authorities written to both of you, or just one of you. It can be bills from a dentist, from a fitness club, whatever it is. And there is a Facebook group that I want to highlight here. The Facebook group is not part of Ægteskab Uden Grænser, but it's very it's a very good group, actually, in my perspective. And I will also give you the link to that one. When you go into this group, I don't know if you're a member of that group. It's about family reunification in Denmark according to EU law. Then go to the group's files. It is this group that I mentioned here in the comment. If you go to the files in this group, there is a lot of people who have put up what they have put up as documents for their application and succeeded about it. However, do not use those lists, as this is also what I have to put up. It's only a guideline. So in your own case, of course, you can do something similar as what is written in these posts, or in these files. But you can also use your own imagination to add up other things. There's no limit, basically, on what you have to provide. But of course, do only things that can support or back up your side of the story, that you have actually been living in that other EU country. So that is actually what I had to say here. I thought it would take a lot longer time. So that gives us almost half an hour for questions and answers. So if you have any questions, please put them up in the comment section, and then I'll take it from there. There are some who already wrote to me here. There was one in the beginning, before we started actually, who asked, can I still live in Denmark and just work in another EU country and still be under EU law? Yes, you can. And there is a case law on that one from the European Union Court of Justice. I can try to see if I can find that one. Go out of all this first, and then I'll go to the court's homepage and find that one. And it's called no, it's not that one. I have to try another one. Oh yeah, here it is. And then I will try to find the English one. And why does it not change to English? Well, it will not transfer to English, so I have it here in Danish. And for you who ask and other people, I admit that it is not what we talk mostly about, this way to do it, but it is actually possible to do it. And the case law on that one is right here. So let's go to your other questions. Peter Friends has asked, I have relocated to Spain on the 1st of January and have resident card. No, you do not. You have a registration certificate in that other EU country. Residence card is only for your spouse. My wife will come on 7th of April and have a Schengen visa for 90 days, and we will travel to Denmark on 27th of April and apply for family reunification according to EU law. We are married in Denmark on the 8th of August last year. We'll apply to see you when we come back to Denmark. Is that possible? Yes, it is. It is perfectly okay to do it that way. As long as you can prove that you yourself has been staying in that other EU country for at least 3 months, and you can say that in the time from now, or from not from now, but from January 1st and until now, there has been at least 3 months, but it is a documentation on the stay in the other EU country that is the most important. It is not actually how long you stay, as long as you stay there for at least 3 months. So it's a documentation on real and factual settlement in that other EU country that is the most important. Stefan asked about a national thing, but in this live stream we will not discuss national law, unfortunately. So we'll take that at another time. Then there is Klaus Palm. Now my wife has returned here to me in Sweden, together with her 6-year-old son. Her visa will expire on May 10th. Do we have to apply now? Or can we start to move back to Denmark in 2 or 3 weeks, and after that apply to Siri? And then he tried to explain here that he moved his address to Denmark on May 1st, for instance. Does that mean that as soon as the application is ongoing, then he do not need to go home? And is that anything that you get a confirmation on? First of all, your plan is possible. You can do it the way you describe it here. From the time that you arrive to Denmark, and she then wants to apply for a residence card here, she has 3 months to do that after she has crossed the Danish border. And that doesn't matter what her visa says. She has 3 months. And even she drag it as long as possible, she still have the right to work in Denmark from the very second she crossed the border. She has the right to attend language school, if she wants, from the time she crossed the border. However, about language school, she has to apply through your municipality. So, and when the case is ongoing, she can remain here. She do not have to go home. And yes, you will have a receipt on this. William, first of all, he thanks for the link that I have put on top. And then, if my screen here can stay still, he asks, if I live in Denmark but work in Sweden to apply EU rules, will my third national wife need to apply at the Danish embassy for entry visa? And also, what if I stop working in Sweden and I lose my status? What will happen to my wife if she's in Denmark? Good question, actually. About the visa, yeah, she has to apply at the Danish embassy for a visa, but she can still do it according to EU law because you exercise EU law. So that is a good one to use. And then you ask, what if you stop working in Sweden and you lose your status? If she is in Denmark and you lose your job after you cease your job in Sweden, she's still here on EU law. Because it pertains the same as if anyone else moved to Sweden, and they then later moved back to Denmark. It's exactly the same scenario, if you can call it that. That is what will happen in a situation like this. If you lose your job while the process or before she apply for a Danish residence card, then the Danish authority might say that you have to apply according to Danish law. And then we have the next question. It's from Dana Jørgensen. I am Danish. My husband is Australian. We moved to Sweden and he's waiting for his residence card permit to be processed. It's been 4 months. He has received a Swedish personal number and is registered in the Swedish system. He doesn't have his residence card yet though. So can Sweden make a temporary permit of sorts which would allow him to travel to countries in the Schengen? No, they don't do that. Sweden don't have a coming back permit, so that is not possible from Sweden. Yeah. Is there any more questions from all you guys? It can also be from a question from your partner that wants to relieve the heart. Dana, you proceed. Thank you. How can we then cross the border to Denmark if we want to move home in a few months? When you say move home, do you then mean Sweden or to Sweden or to Denmark? If you mean to Sweden, because that is your home right now, then the only way you can cross the border is if you want to relocate to Denmark. If you just want to go home, residence permit is called a residence card, and there is a difference. The difference is that with a permit, you only have the right to, for instance, work and go to language school, etc., from the time you actually have the permit in your hand. With a residence card under EU law, you have the right from the beginning when you exercise EU law. You don't have to wait for the actual card to come. So, and the first residence card in Denmark will be for 5 years and is temporary. When you then reapply, you will have what is called a permanent residence card that is valid for 10 years at a time. And that might sound a little, but the reason is that they want a new photo of the person regularly, so the person is still recognizable, also after maybe 30 or 40 years. So that is why they want to, or not want to, it's written in EU law that it has to be this way. But I say want to because that is the easiest path to make people understand it. They want to do that. So the only thing you have to do when you have to renew your permit, or not your permit, your residence card, permanent residence card, after the first 10 years, for instance, that is that you only send them 2 new passport pictures. That's it. So it's very, very easy to do it this way. So that was a little extra bonus info to you, Dana, and your partner. If you want to move back to Denmark, relocate to Denmark from Sweden, you can do that even without a visa, even without a Swedish residence card or residence permit. Again, I will refer to what I put in the comment earlier. I put a link to something called what was it? I have to go back here just a second. It's a link called No Visa but Still Want to Move. It's a guideline. It's not a enforceable paper or document. It's a guideline, but of course it's based on actual EU law. So you can use it, but it's not enforceable in the legal system. So that is what I want to say to you, Donna. And then I proceed to William. You say, great. To clarify, if I work in Sweden and she is in Denmark and I lose my job, does she just stay in Denmark with no problems, or do I have to fill out the same application where people who have lived in Sweden fill when they return to Denmark? No. When she has arrived to Denmark and you still work in Sweden, she apply for a Danish EU residence card, and that is valid for 5 years. So even if you lose your job afterwards, she still have her EU residence card, and that is still valid for those 5 years. And when she wants to renew it, she can have the permanent residence card for 10 years that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. So so that is how that part works. Klaus Palm, he put a question in Danish. I will translate it to English. Is it more secure to remain in Sweden and apply for residence there? In this term, is it more safe to stay in Sweden and apply in Denmark from Sweden and stay there in Sweden until you get the final answer? Yes, it is. Because let's say that Siri in Denmark turn your application down. That is possible. But let's take that scenario. Siri turns down your application. If you stay in Sweden, it does not affect in any way, form or shape your stay in Sweden even afterwards. And you can lodge a new application if you want to the Danish authorities. But of course, in that application, you have to add in what they have asked you to put in that you have not done in the original application. But if you move to Denmark first and then apply, and you get a refusal, then your spouse need to go back to her country, home country, and then you have to try again, either according to Danish law, or you relocate to another EU country once again. And living in a moving box is maybe not the best choice. So actually it is more safe for both of you that you stay in the host country, apply in Denmark, and you remain in the host country until you have the final answer from the Danish authorities. However, if you are 200% sure that you are on the spot in your documentation and everything, there's nothing to point at, a finger at, then there's nothing wrong in moving to Denmark and then apply. And there's either nothing wrong with applying from the host country and move back to Denmark while Siri is processing your case. But it's completely up to you if you have what we in Danish call easy maven or not. We cannot make that decision for you what is best to do. We can only tell you what is your options and what to be aware of in that process. And then it's for you and your partner exclusively to make the decision, how do we do this? And then you ask in the next question, that clears it up. Thanks. The work in Sweden, does it need to be full-time? Nope. Also, this approach seems almost like cheating. Strange in haven't heard this method being more prevalent and widespread. It's not cheating, because there is an EU law, and I just put the link to it, that tells that you can actually do this. And it is not cheating, it is not any way, shape or form unlawful. It is completely lawful to do it this way. And it don't have to be full-time work. You can also do it part-time and work part-time in Denmark, for instance. So there's nothing wrong in this action here by remaining in Denmark and working in Sweden or Germany or whatever other EU country you choose. That's perfectly fine, as long as you can commute every day back and forth. Claus Palm I have lived in Sweden from the 1st of October last year. I work in Denmark every day. How many percentage do I need to stay in Sweden? There's no percentage on it. There once was this interpretation that there was a percentage. That's not. As long as you go from Denmark, you go from your residence in Sweden, you cross the border, you go to work, you do your day's work, and you go back to Sweden, and you repeat that the next day. In a normal working circuit, then everything is perfectly fine. You can also, of course, when your partner or spouse has a valid visa or a residence card in Sweden or in Germany or whatever country you live in, then you can also go on family visits if you want. As long as there's no pattern in it. For work there is a pattern, of course, and that is acceptable. But for family visits and like that, no pattern, please, because then you will be turned down, or there's a big risk of it, anyway. And then you say that sometimes you sleep in Denmark 2 days. As long as it's sometimes. Again, no pattern. William, your next question is, so I need to invite her, and what else does my wife need to show in the Danish embassy in her country to acquire the entry permit to Denmark? You have to invite her. You can use the Danish VU2 from newtodenmark.dk as a template to find out what kind of information do the embassy need. However, the only point not to answer is each and every question about financing. That is not relevant for a visa according to EU law. That is only relevant when she has arrived and applied for a residence card. So I will invite you to go to newtodenmark.dk and under the visa section you find the invitation template and then go from there. You can make your own invitation paper and send that off, and only use the VU2 as a template. You can email your partner, you can send her a old-fashioned letter with a stamp on it and everything, or however you want to do it. As long as your partner get your invitation. And with that invitation, he or she can go to the Danish embassy and apply for a visa according to EU law, because you exercise EU right. And then they have about 4 weeks to process your, or they have to, not, I tried again. Um, the embassy has about 4 weeks to process her application. And that is also a guideline, is nothing enforceable. And then after that, she can go over here to be with you. So that is basically how much we could go through today. Thank you for all your questions. That actually add up to what I had to tell in the beginning here. So thank you for that. Some of your questions has been quite interesting. So and the topic for next time, which will be the first Sunday in the month of May, same time, same place. That will go a little backwards actually, and it will be about how to move to another EU member state or EEA member state. I talked to one of my friends the other day, and he said if you lack any ideas about what topics you can talk about, then just call. And he actually put up some suggestions. So, and I picked the first one he said, and that was how to move to another EU country. So that will be the topic next month. And by that, time is now 4 o'clock. Thank you for being here. My name is Kim Pedersen Nyberg, and I'm the head of the legal team in Ægteskab Uden Grænser. And I have been an advisor in that organization since 2007. But I'm not a lawyer. Let's point that out. But I have been guiding on all this since 2008. So thank you for joining, and maybe we see each other next time. Have a nice day.